A cry of pain, sharp and desperate, shattered the oppressive silence of the night. Jack Mercer's head snapped up from the kitchen table, his eyes pulling away from the stark red ink of a late payment notice for the garage. In the living room, a silhouette of agony was hunched over on his worn-out sofa. It was Maya, her hands clutching her stomach, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated agony. Panic, as cold and sharp as the blizzard still raging outside, seized him. All the exhaustion from his day, the gnawing worry over bills, evaporated in an instant. He rushed her to the nearest clinic, his old truck skidding on the treacherous, ice-slicked roads. His mind was a maelstrom of fear and what-ifs. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit waiting room, the scent of antiseptic burning his nostrils, he watched a nurse lead her away through a set of swinging doors. The reality of the situation crashed down on him with the weight of a collapsing building. The secrets she was hiding, the undeniable risk he had taken by letting a complete stranger into his and his daughter's life. The money he didn't have, none of it mattered in that moment. All that mattered was the terrified young woman and the fragile, unborn life she was fighting for. It was in that stark, lonely moment, surrounded by the quiet suffering of strangers, that he realized his house, for the first time in 2 long years, had started to feel like a home again. The quiet, gentle presence that had tiptoed around the edges of his grief-stricken life was not a burden. She was a gift. But as he stared at the closed doors, a profound question echoed in his soul. How had this stranger ended up on his doorstep? A precious, terrifying secret in the middle of his quiet, broken life. It all began on the coldest night of the year, a night swallowed by a furious blizzard that had descended upon the town with a blinding, roaring whiteness. For 2 long years, since the world had tilted on its axis, Jack Mercer's life had been a monotonous, grinding cycle of grease-stained hands, the metallic scent of engine oil, and the heavy, suffocating silence that fell like a shroud each night after he put his daughter Lily to bed. Ever since losing his wife, Sarah, to a sudden illness, grief had become a permanent resident in their small home, a shadow that clung to the corners and dulled the color of everything it touched. He worked tirelessly in his auto garage, a business he'd inherited and now struggled to keep afloat. The work wasn't just to pay the mounting bills that seemed to breed in his mailbox. It was a penance, a way to exhaust his body so his mind wouldn't have the energy to feel the cavernous emptiness that Sarah's absence had left behind. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, a girl who once had a laugh like wind chimes, had retreated into a world of her own. She was a quiet, fragile ghost in their home, speaking only in whispers, her large, expressive eyes seeming to hold all the sorrow of the world. Jack saw his late wife in those sad eyes, in the gentle curve of her cheek, and it was a constant, painful reminder of the vibrant, uncontainable joy he had lost. He could diagnose a faulty transmission with a single listen. He could rebuild a seized engine from scratch, but he had no idea how to repair the growing, silent chasm between himself and his own child. That night, as Jack was doing a final check on the locks of the garage, the wind howling like a hungry wolf, a flicker of movement against the whitewashed backdrop of his porch caught his eye. It was a shape, a dark smudge against the swirling snow. Caution, a tool he used as often as a wrench, screamed at him to stay back, to retreat into the relative safety of his garage and ignore it. This town had its share of desperation. But then, a gust of wind pulled at the figure's thin coat, and he saw it, the unmistakable gentle curve of a pregnant belly. She was with child. The thought of Sarah, whose boundless kindness had always been his guiding light, whose philosophy was to always offer a hand to those who stumbled, pricked at his heart with a familiar ache. With a heavy sigh that turned to a cloud of steam in the frigid air, he walked the short distance to the front door and flicked on the porch light. The sudden yellow glare illuminated the woman, and she looked up with wide, terrified eyes, like a startled deer caught in the headlights. Her face was pale, her lips tinged with blue. "You shouldn't be out here," Jack said, his voice emerging as a low, gruff rumble, conditioned by years of disuse, but not entirely unkind. "You'll freeze to death. Come on," he urged, his resolve hardening as he pulled the door open wider, letting a wave of precious warmth spill out onto the porch. "Just until the storm breaks. It's not safe. Come inside." Slowly, hesitantly, she rose on unsteady feet and shuffled past him into the warmth. As the heavy oak door clicked shut, sealing them off from the raging tempest, Jack felt a palpable shift in the static air of the house. He had just let the world, in all its chaotic and unpredictable glory, back into his life. He had no idea of the beautiful, terrifying chaos that would follow. "Her name," she whispered, "was Maya." Her voice was so soft, so delicate, it was almost lost in the quiet hum of the refrigerator. From the hallway, shielded by the doorframe, Jack's daughter, Lily, peered out, her small face a canvas of wide-eyed curiosity. The storm raged through the night, and by the next morning, it had passed, leaving behind a world transformed, buried under a thick, pristine blanket of snow. The landscape was beautiful, but treacherous. The roads were completely impassable, the town paralyzed. A flicker of raw panic crossed Maya's face as she stared out the window at the snowdrifts that climbed halfway up the door. "I have to go," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't be ridiculous," Jack said, his tone firmer than he intended, but it was a firmness born of concern, not anger. "You're not going anywhere in this. You'll stay." One night bled into three, the impassable roads serving as their warden. And then, in that quiet, snowbound house, something unexpected and miraculous began to happen. Maya possessed a gentle, patient way about her that seemed to coax Lily out of her self-imposed shell of silence. She didn't pry or push. One afternoon, she found Lily's sketchbook filled with drawings of a woman with vibrant, sunny hair and a brilliant smile. Drawings of Sarah. Instead of asking the painful questions that Jack always clumsily avoided, Maya simply sat beside Lily and said, "She's beautiful. Her hair looks like sunshine." Lily looked up, her guard momentarily down, and for the first time in 2 years, Jack heard his daughter giggle, a sound so precious it made his chest ache. Soon, the two of them were inseparable. They would whisper and laugh while making cookies, filling the house with the warm, forgotten smells of cinnamon and vanilla, dusting the kitchen and each other with a fine layer of flour. But as Maya coaxed life back into his daughter, the mystery surrounding her only deepened. Her cheap, prepaid phone would ring, and she would instantly reject the call, her face paling, her body tensing as if bracing for a blow. The sound of a truck backfiring on the street sent her diving for cover, a primal fear in her eyes that was deeply unsettling. The nights were the worst. Nightmares stole her sleep, her muffled cries echoing softly through the thin walls. One afternoon, while straightening the living room, Jack found a crumpled photograph that had fallen from the pocket of her coat. It showed a wealthy, severe-looking man and woman, their expressions cold and rigid, posing in front of a grand, imposing mansion. When Maya saw him holding it, she snatched it away, her hands trembling, a wall of fear instantly erecting between them. His initial caution, his instinct to keep a safe distance, was being steadily replaced by a fierce, protective instinct he hadn't felt since Sarah was alive. "Maya," he said one evening, his voice gentle but firm, after a particularly bad nightmare had left her shaken and weeping silently in the kitchen. "You have to tell me. Who are you running from?" Tears welled in her large, haunted eyes and traced paths down her pale cheeks. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice choked with a sorrow so deep it seemed to have no bottom. "It's better for you and Lily if you don't know." His frustration at her secrecy was immediately overwhelmed by a powerful surge of protectiveness. He looked at this young woman, so fragile and yet so resilient, carrying the weight of the world on her slender shoulders. "Your mess is my mess now," he said, the words spoken more to himself than to her, a quiet declaration of allegiance. It was a promise he hadn't known he was ready to make, and it was that very night, as the weight of his own words settled in his heart, that his newfound resolve was shattered by her sudden, piercing cry of pain. The doctor at the clinic, a kind woman with tired eyes, assured them it was a false alarm, Braxton Hicks contractions, brought on by stress. The relief that flooded the small examination room was so potent it was almost dizzying. Jack felt his knees weaken as he helped Maya sit up, their shared breath a single, grateful sigh. Back in the comforting warmth of the house, the terror of the past hour acted as a final, dissolving catalyst. The wall of secrets between them finally crumbled. With tears streaming down her face, her voice thick with grief and fear, Maya told him everything. Her real name was Maya Vance. The stern, unsmiling people in the photograph were her parents, Jonathan and Eleanor Vance, a family whose name carried immense weight and influence in the city. She had fallen deeply in love with a man they deemed unsuitable, a kind, brilliant artist named Ben, who didn't come from money or status. When she discovered she was pregnant, their joy was boundless, but her parents were incandescent with fury. They saw the pregnancy not as a blessing, but as a stain on their pristine family reputation. They immediately began making clandestine plans for a private, closed adoption, presenting it to her as a non-negotiable decision. Then the unthinkable happened. Ben was killed in a tragic car accident, a victim of a drunk driver. In the suffocating darkness of her grief, Maya's resolve hardened into unbreakable steel. This baby, this tiny fluttering life inside her, was the last piece of him she had left in the world. But her parents saw her grief as a weakness to be exploited. They threatened her, vowing to use their considerable power and wealth to have her legally declared an unfit, unstable mother, ensuring they would get custody of the child. They would raise him as their own, erasing both her and Ben from the story completely. So, with nothing but a few $100s and the clothes on her back, she ran. Jack sat in stunned silence, the sheer cruelty of it all washing over him. He was a simple man who fixed broken things, but this was a level of brokenness he could barely comprehend. He was still trying to process the monstrous reality of her story when the blindingly bright headlights of a luxury black sedan swept across the living room window, slicing through the darkness. The car idled silently at the curb, its presence sleek and predatory. A man in an impeccably tailored suit emerged and walked with confident, unhurried steps to their front door. Maya's face went bone white. "He found me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's Mr. Phillips. He's their private investigator." A sharp, authoritative knock echoed through the small house. In that instant, the broken, grieving man inside Jack Mercer vanished. In his place stood a father, a protector. He stood up, his body a solid, unmovable shield between Maya and the door. He opened it. The man, Phillips, smiled, a cold, condescending thing that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Mercer, my name is Phillips. I believe you are harboring someone who belongs to my clients." "She's not going anywhere," Jack said, his voice a low, steady rumble as he blocked the doorway with his solid frame. Phillips's smile widened. He held out a thick, pristine envelope bulging with cash. "My clients are prepared to be very generous for your cooperation. They understand you have financial difficulties. This can solve all your problems." Jack's eyes flickered to the money, a sum that could clear his debts and secure his garage for years. He thought of the late payment notice on his table. Then he glanced back at Maya's terrified face and at Lily, who was now standing in the hallway, clutching his leg. He looked back at the smug man who believed that everything and everyone had a price. "You are in the wrong house," Jack said, his voice laced with a cold, hard steel that Phillips had clearly not anticipated. "Maya is not property. She is a member of this family. If you or your clients ever come near her or my daughter again, I will go to every newspaper and television station in the state and tell them exactly how Jonathan and Eleanor Vance treat their own blood. Now, leave my property." The man's smug expression finally crumbled, replaced by a flash of genuine shock, then hatred. With a final, hateful glare that promised this was not over. He turned on his heel and left. A month later, Maya gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby boy. She named Leo. Jack was by her side for every moment of it, just as he had promised. The seasons turned. The harsh, unforgiving winter finally surrendered, its blanket of white melting away to reveal the hopeful green shoots of spring. The oppressive silence that had once defined Jack's house was gone, replaced by a vibrant symphony of life. It was filled with the soft cooing of a baby, the confident, happy chatter of a little girl who had found her voice again, and the deep, rumbling sound of Jack's own laughter, a sound he thought had been buried forever with Sarah. Lily adored her new role as a big sister, reading stories to Leo with a seriousness and love that filled Jack's heart to bursting. Jack and Maya became a team, navigating the chaotic, beautiful world of sleepless nights and first smiles. Their bond wasn't forged in romance, but in something deeper: shared healing, mutual respect, and the unbreakable ties of a family forged in the heart of a storm. They had, in their own quiet ways, saved each other. One warm evening, Jack stood in the doorway of the living room, watching Maya rock a sleeping Leo in her arms, while Lily sat beside them on the floor, her crayons flying across a page as she drew a picture of their new family. A woman, a man, a little girl, and a baby, all under a smiling sun. The scene was so full of simple, profound love, it nearly brought him to his knees. He realized then that opening his door on that freezing, desperate night hadn't just been an act of saving Maya, it had been an act of rescuing himself from the lonely wreckage of his own grief. Because sometimes, family isn't the one you're born into. It's the one who opens the door when you knock in the cold. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who believes in the power of second chances and simple miracles. In the comments below, we would love to know, has an unexpected act of kindness ever changed the course of your life? We'll see you in the next story.